Hey, this is Paul with a demonstration of the Sin Oscillator in Surge 7.1. Now the Sin Oscillator you might think is pretty uninteresting. It makes a sine wave. Everyone knows what a sine wave sounds like. But we've added a whole bunch of features in Surge 1.7 that kind of make it its own little mini synthesizer. So let's walk through those. So select the sine wave here from the init patch. And by default, we'll get a sine wave. Pretty uninteresting. We'll take the release up on the envelope a little. And so what have we added to the sine wave to make it more interesting? Well, we added this first feature called Quadrant Shifting, which is really a feature that was used by the chips in the 80s FM synths. So the TX81Z had this in abandon. And basically what it is, it's a mathematical technique where you can take parts of the sine wave, and instead of playing quadrant 1 and quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 and so on and so forth, you shift them around. And that's represented here by the shape slider. Now we had a shape slider in Surge 1.6, actually after Surge 1.6.1. We've made a lot of changes to it in Surge 1.7, including mapping all of the TX81Z waveforms and adding about another 15 or 20 waveforms for ourselves. And you'll see as you pull this, we start getting these other waveforms, which are composed of bits of sines and cosines, but are all sorts of crazy shapes. And so we can take this one, for instance, and listen to it. Now we get a different sound, or we can go back to this one. And so, you know, as you can see, this one has a very sharp edge to it, and so has that kind of, like, sort of slight triangle feature to it. Great, so lots of shapes for you to play with to go ahead and try and get the sound you want. We've also taken the feedback, which, if I go back to this regular sine shape, makes the sine feedback on itself. We've added negative feedback, which gives us a sort of tilted shape. So I'm going to go and play as I span across feedback. Kind of gives you a triangle to square shape. We've also made feedback extendable. So if you right mouse button on it and extend it, feedback will now go from 400% to minus 400%. And now we start getting some really crazy distorted sounds. Like that sound is sort of not very useful on its own, but we'll come back to this in a second. The FM behavior switch changes how the sine oscillator deals with external FM behavior. That's unchanged from 1.6. So let me reset feedback to 0 and go out to one of these waveforms here. Let me choose this. One. We also added Unison to the sine oscillator, and so much like the other oscillators, I can go ahead and get Unison with various degrees of detune. And similarly, detune can be extended. So I can go ahead and get a wide variety of voices, which you might find useful for your sound design. Let me turn this back to a more reasonable setting now. Hold on, let me unextend that. Put it back to about 12 cents, go back down to 4 voices. Cool. Now one of the things you'll notice, if we take, for instance, the FM and pick a wave shape, right, we're going to get see this really violent section here. So there's a lot of high frequency noise. So what we did is, to the sine oscillator, we added built-in low-pass and high-pass filters. Now these are off by default, but a new feature in Surge 1.7 is some of our items can be activated by right mouse clicking and choosing Activate. And so now we have a low-pass filter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play those 4 notes. That's D, A, and C, and then just swoop the filter down. Now this filter is the same low-pass filter that you get over here in the filter bank with a resonance set to square root of 2. And similarly, you can activate a high-pass filter. Which takes out the low end. Now that's cool, but remember, Surge is a synth. It's all about flexible modulation. So let me set the high cut down here, and then go grab 2 LFOs. I'm going to grab this one first, that I'm going to put into sample and hold relatively fast, activate it, and now I'm going to modulate this way. Okay, let me increase that rate a little. And also do a bit of deform. Okay. And of course, we can go ahead and tempo sync this. We'll have another video on modulation. But now, cool. I'm starting to get a sort of a bit of a sample sound. Let me change this to the noise to make it a bit more continuous and deform it a bit. There we go. Great. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll grab another one of these. I'll make this an envelope. And let me see. Let me make it an envelope that looks roughly like this. And I can attach that envelope to a big sweep. Cool. And let me take the bass level down. And if I then go and modify the attack here, you can see with the Sin Oscillator and just a couple of modulations, we're able to start making pretty complicated sounds. So an exciting new feature in Surge 1.7. We hope you enjoy it.